Sadly, human remains found on June 30th near the Leon River are now confirmed to be that of missing soldier Vanessa Guillen. Vanessa was reported missing by her family on April 22nd. The remains were found just inside a tree line close to the street in what was described as a shallow grave off 436 just north of Leon River. A search was conducted in the same area on June 22nd with no success. Tim Miller with the Texas EquiSearch said the remains were concealed well enough that the dogs used in the first search did not find them, and that whomever dug the shallow grave where the partial human remains were found went through great lengths to conceal them. They were found under lime and cement and hidden by rocks. The family had been pleading with the Army for the last 2 months to investigate and find her daughter. Apparently, per Sergeant Brian Washko with the Texas Department of Public Safety, a civilian notified Bell County Sheriff's Department when they were in the area and smelled something, and later adding that they saw human hair. The findings came at a time when the family were in Washington seeking a congressional investigation into Vanessa's disappearance. Separately, what is believed to be a suspect in the case died early Wednesday morning, July 1st at 12:29 a.m. from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. While assisting SID investigators, the Killeen Police Department, along with the assistance of U.S. Marshals, Lone Star Fugitive Task Force, attempted to make contact with the suspect displayed a weapon and shot himself. Per accounts, the suspect worked alongside Vanessa that day. He was not her supervisor or a sergeant. The people included in this timeline of events include Myra Guillen, Vanessa's sister, Representative Sylvia Garcia, who has been serving as the U.S. Representative for Texas' 29th Congressional District since 2019, Natalie Quam, the family's attorney, Tim Miller, founder of Texas EquiSearch, a search and recovery nonprofit which has assisted with hundreds of missing persons cases and located more than 400 living people and 238 bodies, according to the organization. Specialist Aaron David Robinson, 20, Vanessa's co-worker, not her boss. He was a junior in the Army. Robinson worked as a small arms repairer with the Forward Support Troop, Engineer Squadron, 3rd Cavalry Regiment. Cecily Brown, formerly Aguilar, Aaron's girlfriend. It appears she was either separated or divorced, but it is not clear. Some of the particulars surrounding this case. Vanessa had told her mother that she was being stalked, harassed, and stared at by a sergeant, which made her very uncomfortable. Guillen stated that the unnamed sergeant would follow her while she went jogging, and that he had followed her into a shower while she was naked. Separately, on June 18th, the 3rd Cavalry Regiment Commander, Colonel Ralph Overland, launched an investigation into allegations that Vanessa was sexually harassed. Her cell phone has never been located. Her cell phone carrier is Sprint. Per reports, Fort Hood, as with many other places, had been under special shelter-in-place orders due to the coronavirus outbreak. This includes not checking ID cards, but instead running entry onto the base through an automated ID card scanner. In addition, no visitors have been allowed onto the barracks or on post housing during the pandemic. A curfew was set for 10 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. every day, with soldiers only allowed to travel outside of curfew hours for essential functions. Note, if there is a crime on base, the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Command, or SID, takes the lead to investigate incidents. SID primarily investigates felony crimes and not sexual harassment allegations. Sexual harassment allegations are traditionally investigated at the unit level. Here are the events that occurred on April 22nd leading up to Vanessa's disappearance, as we are made aware of them. We will then incorporate the details per the criminal complaint or affidavit, and then additional comments from the family's attorney, Natalie Quam, and Tim Miller from EquiSearch. April 21st. Myra and Vanessa spoke Tuesday afternoon by text about purchasing a car for her 21st birthday. Vanessa was excited about their plans. Vanessa was then called by her supervisors and asked to conduct inventory on April 22nd. The U.S. Army stated, Our investigation thus far has determined that she was scheduled to be off that day due to COVID-19, but was called the night before by supervisors that she was needed to complete her arms room inventory because she was an essential military occupational specialty. This is why she was in workout clothes. It was supposed to be a quick day to conduct the inventory. On April 22nd, per Myra, Vanessa texted her boyfriend in the morning to say that she was going into work and said she would text back as soon as she could. No further texts were sent to her boyfriend. Per Myra, around 12 p.m., her texts were bouncing back and calls were going directly to voicemail. Per Sprint, this may mean the cell phone is out of the coverage area versus turned off. I'm curious if there is cell phone coverage in the arms room. Does anyone know? Please let us know in the comments below. Per reports, according to the U.S. Army, an unnamed person saw her in the parking lot of a Regimental Engineer Squadron headquarters at 1 p.m. Around 8 p.m., her sister grew worried and contacted her staff sergeant, who is charged with her attendance. Myra told him that Vanessa was not responding to texts and that something was wrong. He told her that he had not seen Vanessa Guillen since lunchtime, but was expecting to see her at the 10 p.m. check-in. At 10 p.m., the supervisor or sergeant submitted a report that everyone was accounted for that evening. It is not clear if this is the same sergeant that spoke to Myra earlier or called her into work the prior evening. April 23rd. Her unit reported her missing to SID when a check of the barracks and unit area did not locate her. Her car keys, barracks room key, identification card, and wallet were found in the arms room where she was working earlier in the day. Her cell phone was missing. Myra was on site on April 23rd and met with various officers. Note that Vanessa's family indicated she was missing on the 22nd, but the Army reported her missing on the 23rd. However, it seems that SID listed the date as April 22nd. These are the original events on April 22nd as we knew them when she went missing. Now let's incorporate the events of that day in the order that we were made aware of them. We will be covering the deaths of other soldiers-related civilians in a follow-up video. In summary, there are 5 other mysterious deaths surrounding this case. This video will be coming shortly. April 25th. Myra indicated on Facebook that Vanessa's cell phone last pinged in Belton, Texas, which she was told by the Army. April 29th. Per Myra, as we indicated earlier, she was told by the Army that Vanessa's phone last pinged at Belton, Texas. However, the Army then stated the phone that pinged belonged to someone else. Per Fort Hood, her phone last pinged at 5:45 p.m. at Fort Hood. With regards to the Army indicating her wallet was left in the arms room, in an interview with Nancy Grace, Myra stated that when she was on the base on April 23rd, she was disturbed to find Vanessa's stuff had been moved from the arms room to her wallet at her residence. Myra also indicated that Vanessa would not take her wallet with her. Maybe she would take her ID and credit debit card, but not her full wallet. She couldn't have. Her wallet was big and she would wear it around her waist. This can be confirmed in the video where Vanessa is seen going to Tequila, Mexico to buy food 1 week prior. She has her cell phone, car keys, and pulls her bank card out from behind her cell phone to hand to the clerk, and then quickly looks at her cell phone. May 8th. A nameless case was created by SID more than 2 weeks later. Per investigative analyst Matthew Walters, Private First Class Guillen was working in the arms room that day and left behind her vehicle and room keys as well as her identification and bank card in the arms room. She was last seen walking away from Building 9420 Old Ironsides Avenue, Fort Hood, Texas, heading northwest. Notice how the Army now says her bank card was missing and not her wallet. Wouldn't they know the difference between a wallet and a bank card? This begs the question, was this really found in the arms room, and did someone hear Myra state that she could not have taken her wallet? May 30th to June 1st, family and friends are searching Belton Park and area. June 15th, the Army changed the last seen time from 1 p.m. to between 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. June 21st, investigators receive a tip and started to search immediately around 436 and Leon River. June 23rd. A formal in-person military update was provided for the family and others. Garcia said, "The military has pulled records and reviewed credit card and security records. Information on when she was last seen is based on interviews with people. However, no camera video exists." The military confirmed Guillen was last heard from at 11:30 a.m. based on phone records. The family's attorney, Natalie Quam, said that a text was sent from Guillen's phone on the day she was last heard from, notifying a supervisor of a serial number of one of the weapons she had to review. In at least one, it was admitted the supervisor or sergeant, who actually is supposed to account for everyone in the barracks, submitted a report that everyone was accounted for, when in fact, now he's admitted that he did not see Vanessa, said Garcia. Kawam stated that per U.S. Army protocol, checkpoints are carried out during the day to account for soldier whereabouts at 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and 10 p.m. Apparently, the checks were not done at 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., and the supervisor or sergeant who was supposed to account for everyone in the barracks submitted a report that everyone was accounted for that evening. The Army is now convinced there was foul play involved in the 2-month-old disappearance of Fort Hood soldier Vanessa Guillen. The search was still underway. June 25th. The search was suspended. June 30th. Civilians working on a fence smelled something and saw human hair. Tim Miller was on site, and with his team, they discovered human remains. July 1st. Per my conversation with the Killeen Police Department, officers located a suspect in the 4700 block of East Rancier Avenue at approximately 12:29 a.m., and not 1:29 as reported, when he shot himself. At 1:17 a.m. on July 1st, Aaron Robinson, 20, was pronounced dead at the scene by Justice of the Peace Garland Potvin. Robinson's girlfriend, Cecily Aguilar, 22, is arrested. Guillen, who was a private first class at the time of her disappearance, was promoted to specialist Wednesday, July 1st, due to her time in the military, Fort Hood officials said. July 2nd. A criminal complaint was filed which provides some additional information. Per the document, this affidavit was being submitted for the limited purpose of securing an arrest warrant for Cecily. Therefore, the FBI agent did not include each and every fact known to him concerning this investigation, only those facts that he believes are necessary to establish probable cause for Cecily's actions. They also only pertain to events from April 23rd to June 30th. It also specifically calls out the FBI agent's involvement in activities surrounding U.S. Army Specialist Aaron Robinson and Cecily Aguilar. Only. I thought they used a strange set of words in their charge. Agree together and with others too. Agree together sounds like Aaron and Cecily, but who are the others? In summary, all of the facts may not be presented, and all of those involved may not be called out. A witness stated that Private First Class Guillen left the arms room where she was working to visit the arms room at another location at Fort Hood, one controlled by Specialist Aaron Robinson, in order to confirm serial numbers for weapons and equipment. The witnesses verified that Private First Class Guillen left the arms room without her U.S. Army identification card, bank card, or car keys with her barracks key attached. The witness stated that her property was still in the arms room when he secured the arms room for the day. It is important to understand what date and time this occurred, as it helps create a factual account of how the evidence started coming together. For now, let's assume this happened prior to 11:30 a.m., since 11:30 a.m. was the last time someone saw her. It appears that one or more persons worked with her in the arms room that day, given they saw her leave her belongings, but in one statement it says witness stated, and then followed by witnesses verified. How many people worked with her that day? We do know that at least one other person was there with her that day, and it was a male. Per our research, it appears Aaron Robinson was located at 9421 Old Ironsides Avenue, Fort Hood, which is east of 9420. Remember, investigators said she was last seen heading northwest of 9420 in the parking lot. It is odd that the witness or witnesses knew she was next door but did not stop by to give her her belongings, or at least tell her they were leaving. After all, how would she get back in with no ID? Could she get back into the arms room? It is also very odd that someone would leave their identification card, keys, and bank card behind in full view with others in the room. For security reasons, if she was being harassed, would she leave these sensitive items in full view for others to access? They originally stated that her car and barracks room keys, identification card, and bank card were found in the arms room where she was working earlier in the day. They were apparently found later in the day by someone that knew she was working that morning, yet she wasn't reported missing? Also note that the witnesses stated they found her bank card and not her wallet, while the Army was reporting her wallet was missing, so it is interesting to see the discrepancy. A search of Guillen's phone records revealed the last outgoing text message from her phone was a message to Specialist Robinson's phone. At what time? This conflicts with the original statement being her last text message went to her supervisor. Clearly, Robinson was not her supervisor. Why would there be conflicting accounts if they had the exact records from Sprint? When did the Army uncover this information? It is not clear when they obtained the phone records or what time these events happened. Let's assume for now that the last text time is correct. Whom it was sent to is not. Specialist Robinson was one of the last people known to have seen Private First Class Guillen. It is not clear who saw her last, as they stated Robinson was one of the last to see her. Since someone saw her at 11:30 a.m., did Robinson see her after that or before that? Who was the last person to see her? On 4/22, Specialist Robinson stated he texted Private First Class Guillen to inform her he was in the arms room. He said she read serial numbers for equipment, and afterward, he gave her paperwork and the serial number for a .50 caliber machine gun, which needed to be serviced. He said she left the arms room, and he believed she would have next gone to the motor pool. Witnesses at the motor pool prepared to receive the paperwork from Private First Class Guillen stated that she did not arrive with the papers. How did Robinson have her phone number? It sounds like they knew each other before, or at least worked together before, and had the need to communicate by phone. Was this the last text message Guillen received? It sounds like he texted her, and then she arrived to his arms room shortly thereafter. On 4/28, USA SID interviewed Specialist Robinson. Among the things he said concerning his activities on 4/22, Specialist Robinson stated that after he finished his work, he went to his off-post residence he shared with his girlfriend Cecily Aguilar, and did not leave the rest of the night except around 6:30 p.m., when he had to come on post to sign on to a government computer to enroll in training. I would imagine this can be easily validated through base records. It is very odd that he would share the name of his girlfriend and the fact that he was living with her if he was trying to hide this from everyone, so much so that he apparently murdered Vanessa to keep it a secret, which we will find out later. Where did Aaron live? It sounds like he lived with Cecily, off post. Did he also have a room in the barracks? Remember, a curfew was set for 10 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. every day, with soldiers only allowed to travel outside of curfew hours for essential functions. If he had an assigned room in the barracks, then could he leave? Would this be considered an essential function? On 5/18, 2 witnesses were interviewed who stated that on 4/22 they observed Specialist Robinson pulling a large tough box with wheels that appeared very heavy in weight coming out of the arms room, the same room where Specialist Robinson worked. The 2 witnesses observed Specialist Robinson load the tough box into his vehicle and drive away. Note that these 2 witnesses waited almost a month to let someone know that they saw something. What time did they witness this? It doesn't appear that Aaron was questioned about this. Why not? Could any Army member load up their vehicle with all kinds of weapons without anyone knowing about it and leave the base? Let us know below in the comments what you think. On 5/19, Specialist Robinson consented to a search of his cellular phone by UFED extraction. A review of the phone call logs revealed Specialist Robinson called Aguilar multiple times during the night of 4/22 and as late as 3:30 a.m. on 4/23. Specialist Robinson also received calls from Aguilar throughout the day. This is very odd because if Robinson knew he was guilty, why would he turn over his phone records? It is possible, but perhaps he would have made them work harder for it. Interesting that they specified the exact time when it was related to Aguilar, but no time was specified when he sent a text to Guillen. Why? Cecily Aguilar, girlfriend of Specialist Robinson, was interviewed on 6/19. Aguilar stated that she was with Specialist Robinson all night on 4/22. She was asked why Specialist Robinson would call her after midnight if he was at the residence with her. She stated she could not find her phone and had Specialist Robinson call the phone to help her find it. This statement, however, is inconsistent with the lengths of the calls. Specialist Robinson called Aguilar several times throughout the night, and the calls after midnight were for lengths greater than 1 minute. Aguilar, during a re-interview, stated that she lied in her previous statement. She stated that she did leave her residence because one of the ways she copes is by taking long drives. Aguilar stated that she was with Specialist Robinson on the night of 4/22, where they took a long drive to a park in Belton, Texas, to look at the stars. Aguilar stated that after going to the park, they returned home. We do know that Robinson's cell records were pulled on 5/19. This interview was conducted on or after 6/19. It seems like there is some information missing around what she was coping with. I wonder if they went to the same park that Myra and her search party were looking in late May, early June. An analysis of phone records pertaining to Specialist Robinson's telephone was conducted. A review of the location data revealed that at approximately 1:59 a.m., 4/23, Specialist Robinson's cell phone was identified in the vicinity of 436 and West Main Street in Belton, Texas, specifically on or around a bridge. Specialist Robinson's cell phone then tracked along the Leon River in a northward direction. Specialist Robinson's cell phone remained in the area for approximately 2 hours. Aguilar's cellular telephone location data was also analyzed later, and it revealed she and Specialist Robinson were near the Leon River together on 4/23 and 4/26. Did Aaron's phone show he was there on the 26th as well? There is no mention of this. If they were together, what reason would they have to call each other? Based upon this data, personnel from USACID Bell County Sheriff's Office and Texas Rangers searched the Leon River site in Belton, Texas on June 21st. A burn site with disturbed earth was identified. What appeared to be the burned remains of a plastic tote or tough box were found nearby in an area near where Specialist Robinson's phone pinged. The soil beneath the burn site was remarkably softer and moister than the soil found at similar depths, merely feet away, and had an odor of decomposition. However, no remains were located. I believe they indicated that they had received a tip. However, it sounds like this was based on evidence gathered to this point. We know the search was canceled on the 25th, and it is odd that they did not continue to search this area, given the evidence seems to match up with what witnesses saw, that being the tough box. It is also interesting that they smelled decomposition, but the dogs could not detect anything, as we know dogs were used in the search. About 1 p.m. on 6/30, USACID was notified that contractors working on a fence adjacent to the Leon River in Belton, Texas, discovered what appeared to be human remains. USACID, along with FBI, BCSO, USMS, and Texas Rangers searched the area and identified scattered human remains that appeared to have been placed into a concrete-like substance and buried. I find it personally alarming that dogs whose sense of smell is 40 times greater than humans did not locate the remains on the 22nd, but a human did, using their sense of smell just 7 days later. Also, I wonder how easy or difficult it is to see black hair in the forest. Per Tim Miller, later he stated in an interview, "It was shocking how close it was to the burn pile," referring to the remains. Right up until 8:30 p.m. on June 30th, there is no additional detail provided as to what happened on the 22nd. We still do not know who murdered Vanessa and the circumstances that led to her death. It appears they did not question Aaron on this day, since there is no documentation available. About 8:30 p.m., June 30th, Aguilar was interviewed and admitted that Specialist Robinson told her that on 4/22 he struck a female soldier in the head with a hammer multiple times at his arms room, killing her on Fort Hood. Affiant knows that this arms room is located within the Special Maritime and Territorial Jurisdiction of the United States and in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction. Aguilar advised the female soldier never made it out of the Army alive, referring to Fort Hood. Specialist Robinson then placed her in a box and moved the box to a location near the Leon River in Belton, Texas. Paragraphs 14 through 19 are a summary of Aguilar's statements to law enforcement on June 30th. So we do know that Aguilar has lied before, and this is her account of the story. How do we know she is telling the truth? We do not know and will never know Robinson's side of the story. How do we know it happened on base? How do we know she did not aid Aaron? How do we know this is how it happened? Was luminol used in the arms room to detect blood everywhere that was told to the attorney? Where's the evidence? More importantly, what motive would Robinson have in murdering her? It sounds like he did not say what his motive was, and she did not ask. Why not? Typically, someone would justify their actions. It appears Aguilar was booked at 2:53 a.m. on July 1st after Aaron committed suicide, almost 3 hours later. Why was she interviewed the night instead of Robinson? And why did she decide to give a play-by-play? Where was Robinson? What is interesting is that 2 hours later, the main suspect is able to leave the base without any issues. Why was he not arrested at this point? Note, if he struck and murdered her, the timeline, as it is, does not make sense, as no one would have seen her at 11:30 a.m., and the last text would not have been sent at 11:30 a.m. On the evening of 4/22, or the early morning of 4/23, Specialist Robinson picked Aguilar up at a gas station she worked at and took her out to a site near the Leon River and near a bridge. A box with wheels and handles was already at this site. Specialist Robinson walked Aguilar over to the woods and opened up a box for Aguilar, and she saw a dead female inside the box. Aguilar, on a later date, identified the dead female as Vanessa Guillen. If he picked her up from work, why wouldn't she know what time that was? After all, she was finishing work. It is interesting that while she was in the dark, she calls out the box as having wheels and handles. Curious, though, why didn't she know right away that it was Vanessa? It sounds like she did not know Vanessa. Otherwise, I would think she would have known immediately who it was. She states on a later date she identified the dead female as Vanessa Guillen. Perhaps the media blitz of missing soldier helped her connect the dots. To more easily dispose of and to conceal the body of the dead female, Specialist Robinson and Aguilar proceeded to dismember the dead female's body. They used a hatchet or axe and a machete-type knife. They removed the limbs and the head from the body. Specialist Robinson and Aguilar attempted to burn the body. However, the body would not burn completely. They placed the dead female in 3 separate holes and covered up the remains. Since he picked her up from work and went to the site, Robinson must have brought these tools with him from the base. That is, a hatchet or axe, a machete, and a shovel. So not only did he have a pelican case, but these items as well. Why did they attempt to burn the body? It was already dismembered. What were they trying to hide? Specialist Robinson and Aguilar returned to the site on a later date. This date was believed to be on 4/26, according to cellular telephone site analysis. Prior to their return, they obtained hairnets and gloves. Aguilar purchased a bag of what she referred to as concrete from someone utilizing Facebook Messenger. Again, they would have had to bring a shovel. Where is this shovel now? If she purchased concrete from someone on Facebook Messenger, from who? How did she pick it up? Did it get delivered? How did she pay for it? On that date, Specialists Robinson and Aguilar uncovered the remains of the dead female, removed them, and continued the process of breaking down the remains of the dead female. The remains were then burned again, along with their gloves and hairnets. Specialists Robinson and Aguilar placed the remains back in the 3 holes with the concrete purchased earlier. Why did they continue to break it down? It sounds like they are trying to destroy the body. Why was this so important? Are they trying to hide the cause of death or something else? Specialists Robinson and Aguilar burned their clothes later that night at their residence. Again, a confirmation that they did indeed live together. Specialists Robinson and Aguilar concocted the story about Aguilar and Robinson taking a long drive to a park in Belton as an alibi. To recap, if he came back at 6:30 p.m., he would have had to assemble all of the tools needed: axe, machete, shovel, pelican case with body, lighter for fire, water or something to put out the fire, and a hammer. Sometime on June 30th, around 10:30 p.m. Prior to June 30th, Specialist Robinson had been confined to his barracks room on Fort Hood. However, he absconded from Fort Hood that night. At the request of law enforcement, Aguilar placed a controlled telephone call to Specialist Robinson, wherein he never denied anything they did to Vanessa Guillen and her body. Specialist Robinson texted Aguilar pictures of the news articles advising of recovered human remains. In a later controlled telephone call, Specialist Robinson advised, "Baby, they found pieces. They found pieces." This was referring to the human remains recovered near the Leon River. Earlier, we were told that he lived off post with Cecily. Now we are hearing that he has a residence on post. If he was living on post, why wasn't he confined to his barracks on April 22nd due to the curfew? Even though the military had just heard from Aguilar that he murdered Guillen, Robinson was able to leave the base without issue. The testimony from Aguilar was at 8:30 p.m. Robinson left the base around 10:30 p.m. Robinson did not deny dismembering and burying her, but what about murdering her? It appears there is no discussion of this point. Why wouldn't she try and get him to say that he murdered her? There is no confession of any murder. Why? It sounds like they spoke about what they did together after the fact versus murdering her. Robinson was still alive at this point, and I would think that getting him to confess to the murder would be critical. Per the affidavit, Aguilar continued to assist law enforcement with locating Specialist Robinson as he was on foot in Killeen, Texas. Specialist Robinson was approached by law enforcement. However, he brandished a pistol and shot himself in the head, killing himself. It seems he had a personal pistol at Fort Hood. Is this possible? Are Army people allowed to have their own personal weapons on base to use at any time? He certainly did not stop to pick it up because he was found 2 hours after he left the base, and it takes 2 hours to walk from the base to where he was found. Now let's continue to fine-tune the timeline based on comments from Natalie Kawam, the attorney, and Tim Miller from EchoSearch from a podcast with Nancy Grace on July 2nd. Per Natalie Kawam, the U.S. Army told them that she was murdered between 10:30 and 11:13 a.m. in the arms room. During this 43 minutes, Aaron hit Vanessa over the head several times with a hammer and bludgeoned her to death. Aaron then put Vanessa's body in a pelican case and placed it to the side of the arms room. He then proceeded to clean up the arms room and then at some point went home. Per Natalie, the whole place was full of blood. The U.S. Army told them that Aaron went back to the office around 6 p.m. to pick up the pelican case and take it to the river. If she was murdered between 10:30 a.m. and 11:13 a.m., then all witness accounts of seeing her after that are incorrect, unless these times are incorrect. What evidence do they have that she was murdered during this time? And what do these times represent? How did they get this detailed account of what happened? From Cecily? Why is it not outlined in the criminal complaint? Also, he would really leave the pelican case with Vanessa in the arms room for hours and then return to pick it up? Why wouldn't he take it right away? Why leave the evidence for someone else to find? It is strange that no one saw or heard anything and no video footage. Note there are no towels or cleanup items apparently in the room. Robinson would have had to go out of the building to another one to get the towels and bring them back to clean up the arms room. Apparently, he was able to repeatedly hit her with the hammer until she was dead, put her in a box, move the box to the side of the room, and clean up the room in less than 45 minutes. Wow. When the attorney asked the military who accounted for the hammer missing, he said it was lost and they let him go. Army did nothing when he lost the hammer and girl is missing. How and when did they know the hammer was missing? Per Kwan, he then decides he can't do this himself and that he needs help. He calls his girlfriend, picks her up, and then tells her in person that he has Vanessa's body in a pelican case at the river and that he needs her help to bury her. They first try to burn the body. When her body did not burn, they used a machete to dismember her body. They then dug a shallow grave and dumped the body in quick dry cement. If Robinson told Aguilar it was Vanessa, why did Aguilar state she didn't know it was Vanessa until days later? Per accounts, this happened between midnight and 4 a.m. on April 23rd. They then threw her phone, hammer, and machete out of their window as they were driving. What about the shovel and axe? Also, per the attorney, a warrant was never issued for Robinson's arrest. It wasn't clear why this was the case. Kwan also stated that apparently they never subpoenaed her text messages. Therefore, they could not have known what her last text messages were. They only know who received messages from her and who sent messages to her, but they really don't know what her last messages were and to whom. Also, with the text messages, her supervisor must have said he received one from her at that time, because we know now they did not have her cell records. Per Tim Miller, he said, "The minute they found the burn pile and pelican case, he knew that it had something to do with it. A SID investigator that was out there with us when we found that didn't think it had any relevance to the case. We had to push him, and he said, well, the case didn't look like that, and one of our people had to actually Google the pelican case and showed him the picture before he was even willing to go to the site to look at it." Interesting that it appears that Sid did not want to investigate further unless there was proof. He also said it was shocking how close the remains were to the burn pile. Remember, a burn pile was found on June 22nd, but no remains were found. It is not clear who found the burn pile in mid-June with no remains. Per Tim, the fire must have been 15 feet high as tree limbs were burned. There was also a tire present, which may have been used to fuel the fire. Plastic can still be found on the scene, as it was not taken for investigation. Wow, how did they manage to put out the fire? And no one saw this from the road? Very strange. Finally, remember she was scheduled to be off on April 22nd? The Army stated, "Our investigation thus far has determined that she was scheduled to be off that day due to COVID-19, but was called the night before by supervisors that she was needed to complete her arms room inventory because she was an essential military occupational specialty. This is why she was in workout clothes. It was supposed to be a quick day to conduct inventory." Interesting how the Army said more than one supervisor called. Why did more than one supervisor call? What hours was she expected to work? Could this be a case of poor documentation and/or miscommunication? You be the judge. Let's review the motives provided. The first possible motive was that Vanessa was going to report him for having an affair with Cecily. Per Quam, Vanessa was with Aaron in one of the arms rooms. Vanessa saw pictures of Cecily, his girlfriend. Allegedly, Cecily is married to a former soldier, which is against military rules. Vanessa told Aaron that she had to report it. Aaron said, "You are not going to ruin my career," and grabbed a hammer and murdered her. This would be unlikely for the following reasons. It didn't appear that Vanessa knew Cecily, so how would she know she was married? Cecily herself said that days later, after seeing the body in a pelican case, that it was Vanessa. If she knew Vanessa, she would have known right away. Perhaps she was able to determine it was Vanessa as a result of the media blitz about her disappearance. Also, when he was questioned on April 28th, Robinson stated that after he finished his work, he went to his off-post residence he shared with his girlfriend, Cecily Aguilar. If he was trying to hide this, why would he quickly give out this information? The second possible motive was that she told him that she was going to report him for sexual harassment. Vanessa said her supervisor was sexually harassing her, not a co-worker. Aaron was a co-worker. I would imagine it would be easier to report a co-worker for sexual harassment than a supervisor. A supervisor has much more power and influence over you versus a co-worker. Sexual harassment is typically about power. And also, if Aaron was harassing Vanessa, would she have gone to the arms room alone, knowing he would be there, and would she tell him directly that she was going to report him? After all, she was not able to report any sexual harassment claims prior to this day. So we are left with not knowing exactly what happened that day, April 22nd, 2020. Who murdered Vanessa Guillen? Will there be justice for Vanessa? Our prayers go out to the Guillen family during this difficult time. As a side note, it would be interesting to know if they paid anyone for the tips received. Let us know your comments below. Thank you for watching Crime Chat. To hear more about missing persons or homicides, please subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell, and join in on our crime chats.